Okay, introduction. The reason why I started this is because I thought that it was a crisis of meaning. A crisis of meaning in that we look around us, and I actually stopped watching the news and stopped reading newspapers and stopped doing all that because the stories really were the same ones that I read in history many, many years ago in school already, and they were the same, across the ages, and they really didn't change much. And this whole idea of information and something is only information if it gives you something new. And if I look at the news, they're everything but news. There's the same old crap. And we hear today that we look around, we have global challenges around economic, ecological situations, social situations, and it's all from non-sustainable use of resources, people, and technologies. And then in the 80s, the other thing is, especially in this world, while 70% of the other world still don't have food, clothing, and shelter every night, in this world, we pretty much covered all the bases of Maslow's pyramid, right? Like the idea of the basic levels of shelter and food and security and some friends and a job and a car and oil and all that good stuff, right? So if you look at last century, 1980s were all about, yay, out there, party, yuppie, happy, happy, happy. 90s were a little bit like, what the hell's going on? Now the music was grunge and existential chaos and not really knowing what's going on. And now we're in this beginning 2000s, we've survived the millennium, we're here, and then 2012 is coming up and all that, and it's like, wow, what are we doing? A lot of people are waking up, and it's partly because of events like 9/11. Partly it's also just from a generational thing. We now have baby boomers hitting a certain age bracket, and they have achieved a certain level of wealth in this society. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that affects it later. But we have all those people going, whoa, I'm kind of done most of the major things. I'm ready for something new. What's up with life and where's meaning? So they're looking for that. And the thing is, materialism, more and more people are starting to realize that this whole idea of materialism doesn't really explain the meaning of life very well. And it's also becoming pretty radical. I went to a place the other day, and there's like places people call themselves skeptics. And their goal is to debunk sci stuff. And they call themselves scientists. And I said, wait a second, isn't a scientist someone who says, I don't know, let's see? Rather than saying, it doesn't work and because there's only matter and there's nothing else but matter. So, well, there's that. So they're becoming somewhat fundamentalist, right? Oh, wrong button. Right. How's it going? Forward. There you go. All right, so, and meaning, really, since Descartes was kind of like, oh, religion takes care of meaning, right? And if you look at this beautiful planet, we have all these amazing, phenomenal, and gorgeous religions. But they're kind of trapped in history, too. And they're going, yeah, well, back then, and 2,000 years ago, this man walked across the earth, and 15,000 years ago, this happened. And they don't really have much of a vision of future outside of rapture, which isn't too pleasant of a notion, and I'm not sure how many of you would be wanting to go up in rapture, So that doesn't really sound so good, They're also a little bit trapped in that paradox. If you look at the slide I just showed you with a map, there's all these different religions, and there's blocks of it. But we have global problems. How can blocks of things address global problems? It doesn't work with nations, it doesn't work with religions. Because all they do is they come together and then they fight about who is this better, instead of addressing the actual problem. Right? So in that regard, religion also is kind of behind. And, because people are scared, there's a lot of unknown right now, all these religions, they're also becoming more and more fundamentalist. If I hate something else, if I resist something else, usually it's a pretty good indication that there's fear involved. Right? So that does not really work for someone who's not really interested in that. So what we need is sort of a new paradigm. Right? We need something that says spirit and matter, those two things. We've been fighting all these years now. Let's kind of get together, integrate the two. We need something that integrates male and female. There's still a lot of male-female, and I'm talking about genders, not necessarily physical sex and biological sex, because in each of us there's male and female, but it has nothing to do with whether you have a penis or a vagina or breasts or not. It has nothing to do with that. It's two different things. But something that integrates male, strong, Apollonian, pointed, directional, logic, those kind of male traits, with female traits of encompassingness, form, mass versus form, embracing, allowing, those kind of things. We need something that integrates north, east, south, and west. Right? I just came back from Peru a few weeks ago. Last year, I traveled about 200,000 miles across the globe. Was in India a lot, and I was studying, Hinduism and shamanism and this and that, and all the young people in those countries didn't give a shit. They came and said, "Hey, Tommy Hilfiger, right? yo, and Mercedes and BMW, and they're only interested in this culture. While everybody I met who was studying these things at this conference I was, and then shamanism, was 200 kids from all over the West. And kids I say in quotation marks because, you know, they range from 20 to 60 or 70, so. But there's this merging of cultures going on, right? Because there's a need for a global culture. Again, we have global problems, global things, so we need something that integrates that. We need something that is, on the one hand, radically individualistic, and on the other hand, accepts the unity that underlies everything. The thing is, we have gone down this individual path. You know, we say, oh, I'm separate, I'm separate, I'm separate. Okay, we don't want to be in this stereotypical, everybody walks in the same Nazi, you know, communism, blah, blah, blah society and wears the same clothes. We don't want that. We want to be individuals. So it has to honor that. And at the same time, it has to honor the fact that there's one globe, there's one human race, there's one universe, there's oneness in general. Even if I think about who I am, we'll get more into that. I find to dissolve myself if I look a little bit too closely. Has to provide for personal and shared meaning, meaning that we can have our own ideas, our own thoughts around things. At the same time, we can communicate. I can say this can be a table, this can be a sofa, this can be this and that. And we need to be able to have that communication bridge, right? So there's a shared meaning. Most importantly, I think this new paradigm has to overcome this dualism of I and otherness. Right? A lot of suffering and a lot of crap that we experience in our daily lives, desire and all these things stems from the separation of I and other. Because if I'm not separating myself, I can't miss anything, need anything, desire anything, want something outside of myself. And again, I'll talk about that a little bit more. So what I'm going to try and do is give you a little overview of the next couple of chapters. Right? So this was the introduction. So now we're getting into the meat of it. I'm going to start with talking a little bit about materialism and spiritualism because I kind of pissed on both of their feet by saying that they didn't give you meaning. So I need to explain myself a little bit more, I think. Then I want to talk about this idea of paradise lost and created, this theory of process, this movement that we seem to experience. And I promise it's going to be a morally and traditionally neutral concept, so I'm just using it as a metaphor. Next, I'm going to talk about the multi-solipsistic universe. A lot of you have heard about quantum physics and what the bleep and all this weird reality stuff out there and how reality really works and this quantum thing. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how that might give us a framework to operate within. Next, I'm going to talk very briefly about Carl Jung and his idea of individuation, this process that we all go through, that would probably be tied to the idea of meaning in some way, shape, or form. Right? And I'm talking about this idea of religio and regare, the word of, you know, the Latin root of that, and a couple of other things around that, and why it has such a bad rep today. And I just give it a bad rep too by saying it doesn't work, right? So, and religion, in a way, you know, and I'll talk about why, leads us to the idea of art and transformation, the art of transformation. And you'll get that hopefully more when I get to that chapter. And the art of transformation ultimately is about what? It's about becoming whole, right? Feeling whole, feeling complete. And from there, I'm going to hopefully wrap all of those different models together and give you that last little chapter of conscious creativity and sort of a beginning, as I said, this is called a primer for conscious creativity, the beginning of a philosophy around that. So that said, I hope I'm not too fast. I hope that's working.